Every person you've ever loved, every civilization ever built, every war ever fought, every scientific discovery, every piece of music, every work of art, every dream, every heartbreak, every one of them was only possible because somewhere a heart was beating. Right now, as you're watching this, a fist-sized organ inside your chest is quietly responding to everything happening around you. It contracts, it relaxes, it speeds up, slows down, it adjusts to your body's needs every second of the day, and most of the time you'll never even notice it's even there. It never asks for your attention, it never asks for your permission. It's just simply beat. By the time this video is over, your heart will have beaten around 1,000 more times, and by the end of the day, nearly 100,000, and by the end of your lifetime, billions. How can something that can fit in the palm of your hand continue working an entire lifetime without simply wearing out? What kind of machine can respond to fear, to love, to excitement, to sleep, to exercise, to illness and recovery, and while almost never stopping? To answer that question, we have to go back to a time before you even looked human. Imagine meeting yourself for the very first time. Not as a child, not even as a newborn, but only a few weeks into human development. You wouldn't even recognize yourself. There are no memories, no personality, no smile, not even a face, and yet something extraordinary is already happening. Around 22 or 23 days after fertilization, a simple tube of cardiac tissue begins contracting in a coordinated rhythm. It isn't the fully formed four-chambered heart we know today, but it is the beginning of the organ that will stay with you for the rest of your life. Before you even had a name, your heart was already working. And unlike nearly every other muscle in your body, it would never truly be able to rest again. Think about that for a moment. Every machine humanity have ever built eventually stops. Cars needs maintenance, computer fails, engines overheat, factories shut down. Even your own skeletal muscle demands some sort of recovery after enough work, but your heart doesn't. When you sleep, it beats. When you laugh, it beats. And when you're afraid, it beats. And when you fall in love, it beats. Over the course of an average lifetime, your heart will beat billions of times, pumping an astonishing volume of blood through tens of thousands of miles of blood vessels, and somehow it keeps going. So what makes this small organ so remarkably resilient? The answer isn't one incredible feature, it's thousands of them. Nature didn't build the heart all at once. It solved one problem, then another, then another. Every chamber exists because it solves a problem. Every valve exists because it solves a problem. Every muscle fiber exists because it solves a problem. Every electrical signal exists because it solves another problem. Nothing inside your heart is there by accident, but together, through millions of years of evolution, it shaped one of the most brilliant biological machines ever produced. But to understand why the heart looks the way it does, we have to understand the problem it was built to solve. At first glance, the heart actually looks surprisingly simple. 4 chambers, 4 valves, a few large blood vessels, and that's about it. But Of course, every one of those structures has its own job. But nothing about the heart immediately suggests that this small organ is capable of doing what it does for an entire lifetime. And that's because appearance can be deceiving. Every single part of the heart exists because it solves a problem. And the first problem is actually pretty simple. How do you pump blood to two completely different places at the exact same time? Your heart has two very different jobs. The first is sending blood to your lungs. There, the blood releases carbon dioxide, picks up fresh oxygen, and begins its journey back towards the heart. The second job is even bigger, delivering that oxygen to every cell in your body. Your brain, your muscles, your skin, your kidneys, every organ, every tissue, and every cell. Those are two completely different destinations, different distances, pressures, and purposes. Trying to do both jobs with only one chamber could be very inefficient, so nature solved the problem another way. The human heart eventually became 4 chambers, called the atrium and the ventricles, in a left and the right, respectively. Not because 4 is some magical number, but because 4 solved the problem. The right side of the heart handles one journey to the lungs, a relatively short journey. The left side handles another, the entire body. A much longer journey, and that's why something curious happens. The wall of the left ventricle is dramatically thicker than the wall of the right. Not because it's more important, but simply because its job is harder. It has to generate enough pressure to send blood from your chest to the very tips of your toes, and all the way back to the brain against gravity. So every heartbeat is solving a physics problem, but solving one problem creates another. Blood is constantly being pushed through the heart. What stops it from flowing backwards? The answer is beautifully simple. Valves. One-way valves. They open when blood needs to move forward, then close, preventing blood from flowing backwards. If you ever listen to your heart beat, those sounds aren't actually the heart beating itself. They're the sounds of your heart valves closing as blood changes direction. Even those valves have their own support system. Thin, incredibly strong strands called the chordinae tendineae anchor the valves to tiny muscles inside the ventricles. Without them, the valves collapse backwards under pressure. Blood could leak into the wrong direction, and the entire system would begin to fail. With another problem comes with another solution. When you look at the heart this way, it stops feeling like anatomy and it starts feeling like engineering. Nothing exists by accident, nothing is unnecessary. With every wall and chamber and valve and blood vessel exists because it solves a problem. Not one giant miracle, but thousands of elegant solutions working together. And even after solving all these problems, one impossible question still remains. If the heart spends every second pumping blood to the rest of the body, why does the heart itself need its own blood supply? By now, the heart seems almost perfect. 4 chambers, one-way valves, separate pathways for oxygen-poor and oxygen-rich blood, and every part working together with incredible precision. But hidden inside the perfection is a strange contradiction. The heart is constantly filled with blood, and every second blood is flowing through its chamber. So here's the question. If the heart is literally surrounded by blood, why does the heart itself need its own blood supply? At first, that doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't the heart simply absorb the oxygen from the blood flowing through its chambers through diffusion? Surprisingly, it can't. The blood flowing through the chambers is moving somewhere else. It's on its own journey. It isn't there to feed the heart, it's there to feed you. The wall of the heart are simply too thick for oxygen to diffuse from the blood inside its chamber to every cardiac muscle tissue. So once again, nature found another solution. It creates an entire separate circulation whose only job is to supply the heart itself. These are the coronary arteries. They're the very first branches of the aorta. Almost the moment oxygen-rich blood leaves the heart, a small portion immediately turns back around. The coronary arteries spread across the surface of the heart, branching again and again and again until oxygen reaches nearly every cardiac muscle cell. Every single heartbeat depends on those tiny vessels remaining open. And that's exactly what makes them so important, because they don't have to become completely blocked to cause a problem. Even a gradual narrowing can reduce blood flow. The harder your heart works, the more oxygen it needs, but the less oxygen it receives, eventually the muscle begins to suffer. This condition is called ischemia. The muscle's still alive, but it's starving. If blood flow continues to decrease or the artery becomes completely blocked, the muscle begins to die. That is a heart attack, not because the heart suddenly stops beating like we often see in movies. It pushes their chest and instantly collapses. A heart attack happens because part of the muscle of the heart loses the oxygen it desperately needs to survive, and every minute matters. Because unlike many other tissues in the body, cardiac muscle has a very limited ability to regenerate after significant injury. Once enough heart muscle dies, the body replaces much of the area with scar tissue instead of new contracting muscle, which means the heart may continue beating, but it may never be quite the same again. This is another reminder that even one of the most extraordinary organs ever produced isn't invincible. But even after supplying the problem of supplying itself with blood, another mystery still remains. How does the heart know when to beat? Who gives the very first command? And who keeps the rhythm? Or does the heart conduct its own orchestra? So far, we've seen how the heart is built. How does the heart know when to beat? Who gives the very first command? At first, the answer seems very obvious. It must be the brain. After all, your brain tells your leg to move. It controls your hands. It allows you to speak. It allows me to make this video, so surely it must also tell the heart when to contract. But surprisingly, it does not. At least, not in the way most people imagine. Hidden high in the wall of the right atrium is a tiny collection of specialized cells known as the sinoatrial node, or simply the SA node. It's no larger than a small pea, yet it quietly performs one of the most important jobs in your entire body. It generates the electrical impulse that begins every heartbeat without you thinking or remembering or even asking. That's why the SA node is often called the natural pacemaker of the heart. Every heartbeat begins here. The electrical signal spread rapidly across the atria, causing them to contract and push into the ventricle, and then something unexpected happened. The signal slows down, not because something went wrong, but because it's supposed to. Between the atria and the ventricle sits another cluster of specialized cells called the atrioventricular node, or AV node. Think of it as a checkpoint. It briefly delays the electrical signal by only a fraction of a second. Not long enough for you to even notice, but long enough for the ventricles to finish filling with blood before they contract. Without that tiny delay, the chamber will lose much of their efficiency. Another problem, another elegant solution. Once the ventricles are full, the electrical signal races through the bundle of His, down the right and left bundle branches, and finally into an intricate network of Purkinje fibers. In an instant, millions of cardiac muscle cells contract together as one coordinated heartbeat, then the entire process begins again. What's remarkable is that this rhythm begins inside the heart itself. The brain doesn't create the rhythm, it fine-tunes it. When you exercise, your nervous system tells the heart to beat faster. When you sleep, it slows the rhythm, and when you're frightened, the heart races. So, the orchestra is already being played, but your brain is simply changing the tempo. Every heartbeat you've ever experienced has depended on electrical signals traveling through pathways no thicker than a thread. In textbooks, in literature, in education, in medicine, we've called the heart a pump, and technically that is very true. It pumps blood, it delivers oxygen, it keeps us alive, but just calling the heart a pump almost feels unfair because pumps don't adapt. They don't repair themselves, they don't quietly change the rhythm, but the heart does. Every heartbeat we ever taken for granted is the result of countless biological solutions working together in remarkable harmony with its muscles, the electricity, the pressure, the timing, the blood flow, every structure, every pathway, every signal working together every second of the day without asking for attention. We spend our lives searching for wonder in distant galaxies, deep beneath the ocean, looking beneath buried ancient civilization, and those places absolutely deserve our curiosity. But one of the greatest engineering achievements we've ever discovered has been with us all along, quietly carrying us through every ordinary and extraordinary moments of our lives. Long before our first memory, our heart is already working. It was there before our first breath, our first steps, your happiest day, your hardest day. Every version of you has shared the same heartbeat. So, the next time your heart begins to race, you are witnessing one of nature's greatest achievements, quietly doing what it has always been doing. I often imagine the greatest discovery being beyond our world, among distant stars or deepest parts of the ocean, but perhaps one of the greatest mysteries has been beating inside our chests this entire time.